Leadership and leadership styles. So what makes a good leader? Let's stop the video right now and think about that. Write down some ideas of what you think makes a good leader. Think of a leader, a boss, or any kind of leader that in the past you have admired and you have thought as a good leader. What about this person made them a good leader? So according to professors at Harvard Business School, communication is the real work of leadership. This is by Nitin Noria, and coming from this article on the Harvard Business School site. It seems that communication is really central to good leadership. So Professor Joe Badaracco says communication can't always follow the top-down model, he says. With the fluidity of information in business today, leaders need to be masterful listeners. Listeners, they need to be able to receive as well as send. So that kind of dialectical approach here often is going to be come to the fore. Another professor writes, your behavior or your actions and your decisions are always ways of communicating, and leaders have to learn how to create a consistent message through all of these. So once again, focusing on communication, and the question is really just what makes a good leader, and everybody's focusing on the importance of communication. Communication through words, communication through behavior, communication through actions, communication through decisions. Leaders lead by example. From a leadership point of view, you always want to move toward telling the hard truths. So this is another aspect of communication, but also more specifically telling the hard truths, helping people cope, helping people with the realities of change. But as a manager, you might be more inclined to minimize the complexity of a situation so things can run smoothly for as long as possible. It's often a judgment call. So once again, juggling competing priorities. You have to tell the hard truth, but also maybe you need to minimize the complexity of a situation in certain managerial roles. Often nowadays, good leadership is discussed with a framework of emotional intelligence. So there's this one individual, Dane Goleman, that writes a lot about this, and I actually examined some of his ideas with leadership style and the role of emotional intelligence for different leadership styles. Research also shows that to be a good leader, start by being a good follower. Once again, that dialectical two-sided approach. Leadership is a process that emerges from a relationship between leaders and followers. People will be more effective leaders when their behaviors indicate that they are one of us, that they share our values, concerns, and experiencing. So it's a very interesting insight. If you're a leader, you're also a follower. And by that same idea, if you're a follower, you're also a leader. Nobody's just a leader. You cannot just be a leader without being a follower. Now let's talk a little bit about leadership and gender. So I'm getting some of this work here from Eklund and others I'm citing here. You can take a look more deeply into it. And let's recognize that, as they write, over the past century, the definition of leadership has evolved from the ability to impress the will of the leader on those led and induce obedience, respect, loyalty, and cooperation, which does sound quite medieval, to, quote, the enhancement of behaviors, actions, which are actions, or cognitions, which are thoughts and beliefs, and motivations, which are reasons for actions and thoughts to achieve goals that benefit individuals and groups. I think ideally this is the case, but I wonder if in practice we're still on that kind of older view. But from the literature, we can see that there seems to be a movement toward this new view on leadership. Now, one major characteristic when we're talking about leadership is the issue of gender. And that's because men are usually stereotyped with agentic meaning with agency, characteristics such as confidence, assertiveness, independence, rationality, and decisiveness, whereas women are stereotyped with communal characteristics such as concern for others, sensitivity, warmth, helpfulness, and nurturance. So these all sound good, but men are usually thought of in these more agentic way, whereas women are more in this kind of communal way. And they write, men and women are associated with two different types of leadership styles then. This task-oriented versus interpersonally oriented, or as we just said, also can be thought of as agentic versus communal. But the thing is, there may be an incongruity between the stereotypical leader role, which has these characteristics of competence and likability, and the female gender role, which is just more focused on likability. And I wonder why that is. It's probably because of a bias of people have that that leaders are not supposed to have these communal characteristics of sensitivity or concern for others. It's maybe even this kind of medieval bias that we have, that leaders have to be assertive and decisive. But studies have found that men and women are equally effective leaders, unless the leadership role is gendered. That is, that expectation of people, the bias of the people regarding the leader, it is that it should be a man or should be a woman. So in a context where there is no expectation that the leader should be a man or should be a woman, women and men are equally effective leaders. Let's talk about leadership styles now. So older, more traditional views on leadership styles focused on two major leadership styles, transformational versus transactional. But now we discuss all kinds of leadership styles: ideological, pragmatic, servant, authentic, ethical, spiritual, integrative, shared, distributed, coercive, authoritative, affiliative, democratic, pace-setting coaching. There are probably many leadership styles as there are people who talk about leadership. Probably these are just terms I've found in the literature. Probably many of these overlap, and I'm not going to discuss all of them, but I'm going to discuss these two major ones and also give you a nice little summary that we can take with us. So transformational leader is akin to what is called also charismatic leadership. And Anderson and Son write that charismatic leaders exude passion and self-confidence, engage in self, and promote a collective identity, role model desirable behavior, establish high expectations for followers, and express confidence that followers can achieve them. One person that has been identified as a charismatic leader is Steve Jobs, and this is explained in this article here that I'm citing. You can take a look, by Sharma and Grunt. The thing is, charismatic leaders may also be authoritative narcissists, self-seeking, and manipulative, but according to Anderson and Son, followers show greater satisfaction with such leaders, and this style results in followers giving extra effort and organizational citizenship behavior. Now we have to see, of course, what we are comparing to, right? So what do they say? The proof is in the pudding, but that's some of the ideas out there. Now, transactional leader, as the term suggests, are those leaders that provide positive and negative rewards as part of their leadership strategy. And these, I think, traditionally are conceived more of these rewards are usually, as we talked about before, extrinsic or material rewards, and things may kind of start changing when we're talking about more intrinsic and immaterial rewards. But these leaders can differ in a number of dimensions. So in relation to the contingency of rewards, or the degree to which the leader sets up transactions or exchanges with followers. So people can be more or less transactional leaders depending on that degree of reward. You know, how often does someone actually get a reward, either material or not, from a behavior, and so on. Also the idea of active corrective action versus passive. So active leaders monitor and take action early on or before a problem arises, whereas passive leaders wait until problems are apparent and grave. So these are the other contrasting type of leadership to the transformational leader. That is, is more about the transactions and the rewards that are given rather than the kind of inspirational aspect of the charismatic transformational leader. But here I would like to end with a brief summary of leadership styles that comes from Daniel Goleman and his work on emotional intelligence. And he sets out 6 types of leadership styles. The coercive leader, which demand immediate compliance. The authoritative leaders, which mobilize people toward a vision with some degree of authority, but recognize distinctly from coercion. They are the affiliative leaders, which create emotional bonds and harmony. So maybe more associated with a charismatic transformational leader. Democratic leaders, which build consensus through participation. These are the leaders that want to involve everybody and ask people their ideas to make decisions. The pace-setting leaders, which expect excellence and self-directions. Maybe hands-off leader, we could say as well. And then the coaching leaders, which develop people for the future. They are interested in the development of the individuals themselves and their own growth. And of course, as you can expect, research indicates that leaders who get the best results are not just one of these. They don't rely on just one leadership style. They actually used most of the styles in any given week. So here are some of the ideas about leadership and leadership styles that I wanted to relate to you. And I hope this was useful, and I'll see you next time.